His death was reported in Afghanistan in 2007, but in 2024, his son found an email he shouldn't have opened. Welcome to my YouTube channel, The Narrative Nest. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe, like, share, and comment to let us know what kind of stories you'd love to hear next. Now, let's get into it. The thing about grief is it doesn't end with the funeral. It lingers in the kitchen drawer full of batteries and takeout menus. It hides in the garage, in the coats that still smell like him, in the engine oil you never learned to change. And sometimes, it waits 17 years to show its face in the form of an email that never should have existed. Eli Morgan was 25 when his mother died. She'd been fighting breast cancer for almost 4 years, and the day after her funeral, he was still fielding casserole dishes from sympathetic neighbors in Tallahassee when the email landed in his inbox. No subject line, no sender name, just one line previewed in bold. Your father is not buried where they told you he is. Eli nearly deleted it. He thought it was a scam, a phishing trap from a bot or some twisted opportunist who'd read his mother's obituary in the local paper, but something about it didn't feel like junk. The address it came from was a string of numbers and symbols. But what caught his attention was the signature at the bottom. Check the sentry box. It was a phrase only 2 people in the world ever used: his father, Captain Isaac Morgan, and his father's closest friend, Greg Torbert. Isaac had died in 2007. That's what they'd been told. He'd been stationed in the eastern provinces of Afghanistan classified territory when a routine convoy was ambushed near the Pakistan border. His Humvee was hit by an RPG, the army said. There was nothing to recover. Closed casket, folded flag, words like valor and service delivered in polished speeches by men in clean uniforms. Eli was 8 years old then, too young to understand what words like insurgents or extraction compromised meant. All he knew was that his dad had vanished in a desert far away, and the next time he saw him, it was in a photograph on a metal case. His mother never remarried, never even dated. She'd built a life around mourning that turned into ritual. Memorial Day parades, donation drives, community speeches. She spoke about Isaac like he'd been carved from legend. She never mentioned doubt, never once. So why would this email show up now? Why, of all the times in Eli's life, would someone reach out 2 days after his mother's funeral and claim his father's grave was a lie? He clicked it open. It was short, a paragraph, maybe 2. No greeting, no sign-off, just instructions. Your father never made it on that convoy. The real operation was redacted. He left a trail. It starts with a green Bible inside a locked box marked "Sentry You'll Know Where." If you care to know what actually happened to Captain Morgan, don't talk to anyone yet. Not the army, not the press, not even family. Someone will be watching. Eli stared at the screen. His hands were cold. The house was empty except for the quiet hum of the refrigerator, the distant Florida traffic. He stood slowly, heart pounding, and walked to the garage. His father had kept one thing here, an old black footlocker with brass latches. It hadn't been touched in years. His mother never let him open it, said it was sacred. He found it beneath a pile of Christmas lights and a broken, oscillating fan. The word "Sentry" was carved on the side in sharp, capital letters. His hand shook as he cracked the latches. Inside were photographs, medals, rank insignia, and one small Bible with a green canvas, cover-worn, weathered, and zipped shut. Inside the Bible was a map, Not a modern printed one, but a hand-drawn sketch on yellowed grid paper, coordinates, symbols, a circle drawn around a patch of land near a military outpost he didn't recognize. Coast Province, Afghanistan. The words written beneath it in shaky pen read, Test Site Echo, do not trust command. Eli's mind reeled. This wasn't just some family mystery. If this was real, it was treasonous. Buried military intelligence that someone had tried to erase. He flipped the Bible open further. Between the Psalms and Proverbs was a photo, one he had never seen before. His father, standing beside a jeep, dusty and unshaven, holding a child. An Afghan girl no older than 10, her eyes wide, her mouth unsmiling. On the back, scrawled in black ink, she knew too much. We had to get her out. Eli dropped the photo like it burned. He sat back, heart slamming in his chest. Something inside him had just shifted, like the earth beneath his feet had cracked, and he hadn't noticed until he was already falling. For hours, he didn't move. When he did, he didn't call his uncle, didn't call his friends. He opened his laptop and started typing in everything he remembered from his dad's military life. Old base names, operation code names, anything his mum had let slip over the years. Most of the results were vague, sanitized, but one rabbit hole led to another, and by midnight he'd found something. A veterans forum archived by a third-party domain. Half the links were dead. But in one thread, there it was, Test Site Echo, mentioned only once. If anyone asks about Test Site Echo, lie. No one made it out of there except the CO, and even he disappeared in 2007. The username was anonymous, but someone had responded. Bull CO was Isaac Morgan, and I saw him in Turkey in 2011. Eli blinked. He messaged the user. No reply. He didn't sleep that night, just stared at the photo and tried to believe that the man holding that girl wasn't a ghost. 2 days later, a letter arrived. No stamp, no return address. Just his name written in block letters on the front. Eli. He tore it open with shaking hands. Inside was a page of coordinates. US soil, Colorado, a handwritten note. There's a box in a locker in the Blue Ridge storage facility. Unit 118B. Use your father's old service number as the lock code. You have 3 days. Whoever was doing this, they weren't done. Eli took a leave of absence from work. No explanation. He bought a one-way ticket to Denver under a fake name and rented a car using his mother's backup ID. Everything felt like a dream. The storage unit sat off a winding road, surrounded by barbed wire and pine trees. The lock accepted the code. 118B. Inside was a wooden crate. No markings. Heavy. He popped it open and found 2 things. An old military sat phone, dead but intact, and a file folder labeled Afterlight. Inside the folder were printouts of classified military dispatches. One caught his eye. CAPT Morgan reports secondary. Extraction complete. Civilian child located. Unauthorized relay to Safe House Delta. Awaiting response. March 14, 2007. Another page. Operation Afterlight, Deep Sixth. No paper trail. Units dissolved. Capt Morgan presumed Kia. File closed. But the last page stopped him cold. It was a photo, dated 2011. Surveillance quality. Blurry. A man exiting a hospital in Istanbul. Grey in the beard. Sunglasses. But unmistakably Isaac Morgan. Eli fell back onto the crate. The air felt thin. He tried to breathe, but all he could hear was his mother's voice from years ago. Your father died with honor. What if she'd known the truth? What if she'd kept this from him? The next morning, someone broke into his motel room. Nothing stolen, but his backpack had been unzipped. His laptop was on, battery drained. A sticky note on the screen read, "Stop. This doesn't end the way you think it does." Eli didn't stop. He drove to the return address embedded in one of the sat phone's GPS pingser trail that led to a retired medic in Cheyenne named Victor Rowe. The man was gaunt, suspicious, and lived in a trailer with blackout curtains. At first, he denied knowing anything, but when Eli showed him the photograph of the Afghan girl, the man's hand trembled. "I carried her out," he whispered. "She had scars on her back, burn marks. Said they'd been running experiments on kids." Eli's stomach twisted. "Where did my father take her?" The man looked up slowly. "To a contact in Europe. Said she needed to disappear. That's when we lost him. Is he alive?" A pause. "He was. But if you're looking now, someone's already 2 steps ahead of you." Eli left before sunset. That night, he found a second message, this time emailed to a new burner account he hadn't shared with anyone. "We know what you've opened. You're being followed. This ends in silence, or it ends badly. Choose." But Eli had made his choice the moment he opened the first message. That same night, he found a phone number in the bottom of the crate, scratched into the wood. No area code, just 7 digits. He dialed it. The phone rang 5 times. Then a voice answered. "Eli." He froze. The voice was older, weathered, but it was him, Dad. The line crackled. "I don't have time. They're watching. But I left you something in the red barn. Back of Mum's old property in Savannah. Under the floorboards. Don't trust anyone." Click. The line went dead. Eli stood in the middle of a cheap motel in Colorado, with tears in his eyes. He wasn't crazy. His father was alive, and somewhere, beneath decades of lies and silence, the real truth was waiting. Eli didn't sleep that night. He sat at the edge of the motel bed, phone still in his hand, replaying the sound of his father's voice over and over in his head. It wasn't the memory of a voice that was real, gritty, low, cautious, but certain. The call had lasted barely 20 seconds, but it changed everything. And not just because it confirmed what every file, every photo, and every warning note had hinted at for the last 4 days. It was Isaac Morgan, alive. Eli had been 8 when his father supposedly died. The last time he'd heard that voice was in a voicemail he used to play on repeat after the funeral. "Hey champ, I'll be home soon. Look after your mum for me." He still remembered the day that message was automatically deleted. He'd cried for hours, and now he'd heard that same voice again, rougher, older, but his, somewhere. Isaac was alive, running, hiding, leaving behind a trail for the son he'd left behind. Eli checked out of the motel before sunrise. He paid in cash, took back roads, and dumped his rental car in a mall parking lot 40 miles away before calling another rideshare to the Denver airport. He bought a same-day flight to Savannah, Georgia, under a fake name using a burner account he'd set up years ago for an old Bitcoin side hustle. He didn't use his credit cards. He didn't check his email. And he turned off his phone the moment he boarded the flight, because whoever had broken into his motel room had known exactly where to find him. And they hadn't come to steal. They came to warn. But Eli had crossed a threshold now. There was no going back. The red barn was still there. It sat behind his grandmother's old farmhouse, nearly swallowed by thick vines in Georgia humidity. She'd died 5 years ago, and the property had been left to rot. The roof sagged, the fence had collapsed in 2 places, and the old weather vane at the top had rusted into a permanent lean toward the east. But the barn faded red, chipped paint stood tall. He hadn't been back here since he was 16. He stepped inside slowly, flashlight cutting through the dust and cobwebs. The air smelled like old hay and rotting wood. Somewhere deep inside, something scurried raccoons, or maybe the occasional armadillo. He found the trapdoor beneath a pile of decaying crates. The hinges groaned as he pulled it open. A short wooden ladder led down into a shallow crawl space lined with dirt and ancient wooden beams. He climbed down, and there, in the far corner, half buried in earth and time, was a lockbox. He dug it out with bare hands. The lid was sealed with duct tape and marked in faded Sharpie, Private March 2007. The lock snapped open after 3 tries of his father's service number. Inside was a thick leather binder, a mini DV cassette, and a notebook wrapped in a plastic grocery bag. The first page of the notebook read, "If this reaches Eli, then I'm already dead or about to be." Eli sat back on his heels. The silence inside the crawl space was deafening. He turned the page. I didn't die in Afghanistan. That story was written for me. I escaped the convoy minutes before the hit, because I knew it wasn't an ambush, it was an execution. We were part of a ghost operation called Afterlight Off the Books extraction missions under civilian contractor cover. But the real mission wasn't rescue, it was silence. We were rounding up people who knew too much, locals, journalists, defectors, anyone who saw something they shouldn't have. I tried to pull out. I tried to report it. They gave me a choice, disappear or die. I chose the first, but even that wasn't freedom. Each sentence dropped like a hammer inside Eli's chest. He kept reading. The girl in the photo, her name is Leela. She watched her entire village get wiped out by a drone strike meant for one man. She was the only survivor. She had pictures, names, documents. Someone high up decided she had to be erased. I couldn't let that happen. I smuggled her out. Got her to a safe house in Turkey. But they found us. I ran. She disappeared. I still don't know what happened to her. I need you to find her, Eli. If they didn't get her, she may still be out there, and she may still have the evidence that can expose all of this. Eli closed the notebook, heart pounding. He stared at the floor for a long time. Then he stood, dusted off his jeans, and climbed back into the barn. Back in town, he found a pawn shop that still sold electronics from the early 2000s. He bought a second-hand mini DV camcorder and slipped the cassette in. The screen buzzed. Then Isaac Morgan appeared, dirty, bruised, sitting inside what looked like an old storage container. The video was grainy, but his voice was steady. "If you're watching this, then I finally did something right. Eli, I'm sorry. I should have stayed. I should have fought harder. But you and your mum would have paid the price. They threatened her. They threatened you. I had no choice. But I've been watching. I never stopped. You're not a boy anymore. And if you've gotten this far, it means you're ready to carry what comes next." The tape cut out. Eli sat in the borrowed car for 20 minutes before he moved again. The girl, Leela, that's where this went next. She had survived something dark, and now, somewhere, if she was still alive, she held the key to unraveling whatever Afterlight had tried so hard to bury. He started with what little he had, the name Leela, and the only image he'd ever seen his father holding her. In the Afghan countryside in 2007, the photo had no background markers, no signposts, but the notebook mentioned a safe house in Turkey, Istanbul. That was the first place the veteran on the forum had claimed to see his dad in 2011. He searched Turkish humanitarian records. No luck then. He searched missing refugee child registries. From 2007 to 2012, in one, he found a girl, Leila R. Darian, rescued near the Turkish border, listed as Iranian, not Afghan. Age, approximately 10. Status, disappeared from the refugee camp in 2009. She had vanished again, but someone had flagged her file. The name in the digital note was Greg Talbot, Eli's father's best friend, the same man who'd once taught him how to ride a bike. The man who disappeared from their lives 2 months after Isaac's death and never returned. Eli booked a ticket to DC the same night. He arrived the next morning, exhausted but focused. He found Talbot's last known address in Arlington. The building was gone. A new condo complex stood in its place, but the property records listed his forwarding address as a P.O. box in Alexandria. He staked it out. After 5 hours, a man with a silver beard and a limp exited the building with a key in his hand. Eli's heart stopped. It was him, older, thinner. But Greg Talbot. Eli didn't wait. He crossed the parking lot fast and called out, "Greg." The man froze, turned slowly, and the moment he saw Eli's face, his expression collapsed. "My God," he whispered, "you look just like him." They sat in a cafe half a block away, out of sight. Back corner booth. Greg stared at him like a ghost. "I told him this day would come," he said. "He always said you'd come looking." "Is he alive?" Eli asked. Greg paused, then nodded. "Last I heard, yes. But he's running out of places to hide." He slid a key across the table. "What's this?" "Locker. Greyhound Station in Baltimore. Compartment 3C. It has what you need." Eli stared at it. "Why are you helping me?" Greg sighed. "Because your father gave up everything to protect people who didn't even know his name. And because if you're willing to keep going, someone needs to tell the truth before it gets buried again." The locker held a single laptop. No charger. Old model. Eli found a plug in a coffee shop and booted it. It was encrypted. He tried his father's service number. Nothing. Then he tried a name, Leila. It opened. The screen filled with folders. Dozens, videos, documents, photos, audio recordings, and one folder titled Case 47, Night House. Eli opened it, and the first thing he saw was a report stamped with red. Confidential human trials, evidence. He scrolled. Children detained. No legal authorization. Experimental compounds tested under black site contract. Leila witnessed the death of 4 detainees. She was the only one smuggled out. The name of the site was in bold. Camp Night House, located in the mountains of northern Iran. Technically abandoned in 2006, but the metadata on the attached photo showed timestamps from as late as 2011, and one of those images grainy distant showed a man standing outside a nondescript building. Face partly obscured, beard, sunglasses, but Eli knew that posture, that stance. His father. He was alive in 2011, near Camp Night House, trying to find something or someone. That's when the laptop shut off. Not the battery, the whole machine dead. Eli tried rebooting. Nothing when he turned around. A man in a grey coat was sitting in the back of the coffee shop, watching him, Not pretending. Not hiding, just watching. Eli left. He didn't go to a hotel. Didn't rent a car. He walked to Union Station. Bought a ticket for a random bus to Ohio. Got off in Pittsburgh. Waited an hour. Then boarded a train south. And the whole time, he kept asking himself one thing. Where was Layla? If she was still alive, she was the final piece. Because Isaac Morgan hadn't died for nothing. He had risked his life to save that girl, to save whatever truth she carried. And now, 17 years later, it was Eli's turn to finish what his father started, even if it meant giving up his own name to do it. Eli arrived in Asheville, North Carolina, just after midnight. The air smelled like pine and damp brick. The train ride from Pittsburgh had been long, but not uncomfortable. What unsettled him more was that it didn't feel like anyone was following. Any Miranda in itself was a warning. No more footsteps to cars back. No more shadowed figures in station glass. Nothing. Silence. He checked into a small roadside motel under the name David Morales, using an old college ID he doctored with a thermal printer. The clerk barely looked up, just slid him the room. Key with a bored grunt. Room 12. End of the corridor. Broken ice machine outside. Eli didn't turn the lights on. He shut the door quietly, then pulled the old laptop out from his bag, again the one from the Greyhound locker. It had powered down suddenly the day before and now refused to boot. He tried again, pressing the button, holding his breath. Nothing. Dead. He had a feeling it hadn't just crashed. Someone had fried the machine remotely. Probably the second he accessed the Nighthouse folder. It was a kill switch, preloaded in the machine, triggered by the very thing it had promised to show. He sat back against the headboard, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan. The girl Leela, her name kept echoing through his thoughts like a low-frequency buzz. It had been 17 years since that photo, and now, after digging through names, online medical records, and non-profit newsletters, he had one more thread, a place called Bridgewell Refuge, located in Durham, a former US government building, converted into a halfway home for undocumented children in 2012. No public record of who was housed there, but a privately archived forum post on a Turkish refugee assistance site had mentioned a quiet girl, named Leela D., transferred from Istanbul in 2011. That was his next stop. He left before dawn, rented a new car using a different name, burned the card and SIM the moment he reached the highway. No GPS, just hand-marked maps and highway markers. It was old school, the way his dad might have traveled. Safe, off the radar. He reached by 9:30, a.m. It looked nothing like the secrets it may have once kept. A yellow brick building with white trim, swing sets in the back, and a few teenagers sweeping leaves under staff supervision. It could have been a school, a shelter. Maybe it was both. He walked inside like he belonged, clipboard in hand, glasses on his face, and a made-up badge clipped to his jacket. He approached the desk, smiled at the young woman behind the computer. "I'm here doing some follow-up for the NGO merge paperwork. You have a resident history file on an old case from 2012. Layla de." She blinked. "I'm sorry, we would have come from Turkey," he said gently. "Possible PTSD evaluation on intake. Likely under refugee status, but outside of ICE processing. Probably was kept off books." Her expression faltered slightly. Not denial, recognition. "I'm really not supposed to access those kinds of files." Eli reached into his jacket and pulled out a small folded paper with a Department of Human Services watermark, fake but perfect. She took it with careful hands, read the typed lines, and slowly turned back to her screen. There's only one mention of that name. Not in our digital system. But there's a scan of an old medical intake form with a name partially redacted, L. Darian. Date: October 2011. Stayed for 4 months. Left in February 2012. Where to? The woman squinted. Says she was released into the custody of a guardian named Nora Avery. Eli felt his breath hitch. Avery, his father's mother's maiden name, was Avery. He leaned in. Address. She hesitated. He lowered his voice, let a little emotion tremble. At the edges, please. It's about someone who may be in danger. She nodded, then scribbled an address on a sticky note. Chapel Hill. Eli thanked her and left. The house was modest. A one-story ranch with faded siding and a red front door. The yard was neat. No sign of struggle or avoidance. But the mailbox. Confirmed ITN Avery. He approached slowly, knocked once, then twice. After a pause, the door opened. The woman who answered looked to be in her late 40s, maybe early 50s. Pale blue sweater, reading glasses tucked into her hair. She didn't smile, but she didn't flinch either. Yes. I'm looking for Leela, Eli said gently. I think she might have known my father, Isaac Morgan. She stared at him, long and quiet, then opened the door wider. Come in. The living room was warm. Homey, a pot of tea was steeping on the side table, and a calico cat slept on the window ledge. She told me someone might come one day, the woman said. Someone who'd look like him. Where is she? She left. 4 years ago, changed her name. She only used Layla with me. She was terrified someone would find her. Always checking windows. Always afraid. Why? Nora sat down slowly. Because she knew something. Something they killed for. Eli felt the weight of her words. She talked about a facility. He said, Night House. The woman nodded. She called it a school once, but not the kind with books. Said they had numbers instead of names. Rooms with no windows. Doctors. With accents, she said. They tested things. Pills, injections. Lights. She used to scream about them in her sleep. Said they made people forget. Or made them remember what they never lived. Eli's skin crawled. He pulled out the old photo, the one with Isaac and the girl. Nora took it. Her hand trembled. She was maybe 10 when this was taken, she whispered. She looked the same when she arrived, but she was older than she looked. 17, malnourished. Burn marks on her back. Where did she go? I don't know. Exactly. She left me a box. Said if anyone came, they'd know what to do with it. She stood slowly, walked to a hallway closet, and returned with a cardboard shoebox. Inside was a stack of letters, a flash drive, and a passport under the name Nia Rahimi. She said the flash drive was important, but I never plugged it in. I was afraid. Eli took it, held it like a relic. She's alive? He asked. I hope so, Nora said. But if she is, someone's probably still looking for her. Eli left quietly, the box tucked beneath his arm. That night, back in a cheap motel off the highway, he booted up his backup laptop, the one no one knew about. He plugged in the flash drive. It loaded fast, a single folder, E47, inside dozens of files, surveillance photos, audio recordings, Scans of medical charts. One video. He clicked it. The footage was Laura's, probably recorded on a hidden camera. A girl, Leela, sits in a white room, pale, thin, hands trembling. A man with a clipped accent speaks off camera. Tell me what you remember about room 18. Her eyes flutter. Flashes, screaming. They made us forget. Then made us see things that weren't real. They said it was for testing future combat scenarios, but they used us. Eli felt the air in the room go cold. And Isaac Morgan, the voice asked. He pulled me out. He broke protocol. He knew. He tried to stop it. But they came for him. Said he vanished. But he didn't. He ran. He told me never to stop running. The video ended. Eli stared at the screen. Room 18, the number from the map in his father's Bible. He opened the other files. A document titled MKCHO, Behavioral Conditioning via Visual Stimuli Programming. It was stamped by a contractor named Verix Defense Systems. Another file listed the names of detainees. Subject 18, Rahim Leela. Beside it, escaped. Status, eliminate if located. Eli exhaled sharply. They hadn't just wanted her forgotten. They wanted her erased, and Isaac had stood in the way. Now so was Eli. He closed the laptop and stared at the motel ceiling. Leela was out there, maybe still hiding, maybe still waiting for a signal that someone was looking for her again. He was going to find her, even if it cost him everything. 3 days later, he got a letter, hand-delivered. No return address. Inside was a photograph, grainy surveillance style, taken from inside what looked like a bus terminal or train station. A woman, hood up, face angled away, but her hands' burned scars still faintly visible, clutched a green notebook. On the back of the photo, a note, Lexington, Kai. March 2023. She was alive. Eli packed that night. He was going to find her, and this time, he wasn't running from anyone. He was going to bring it all into the light. The bus terminal in Lexington smelled like coffee, floor wax, and old diesel fumes. Eli had arrived just before noon, wearing a ball cap low over his eyes and carrying only a small canvas duffel, no luggage tags, no phone, nothing traceable. The photograph he held was already creased from being pulled out so many times. His fingerprints smudged across the glossy back where the word Lexington had been written in small, sharp handwriting. The woman in the photo wasn't facing the camera, but it was her, he was sure of it. The burn scars on her fingers, the green notebook clutched to her chest, even the tilt of her head, they all matched. He spent the next 3 hours watching. People, every woman in a hoodie, every flash of green cloth, every scar, but none of them were her. Either she wasn't her or she had gotten even better at hiding. Still, the photo was dated March 2023, just 8 months earlier. That gave him hope. It meant she'd been here recently, and that someone, maybe even his father, wanted him to know it. The clerk at the newsstand didn't recognize her, nor did the woman running the adjacent coffee shop. But when he showed the photo to the old man sweeping outside the Greyhound lot, the man froze. "You, police?" he asked, glancing around. "No, just looking for her. It's important." The man nodded slowly. "She used to sit over there, by the back benches. Never spoke much. Always had that green notebook. Came in every few weeks, stayed an hour, then left. Haven't seen her since spring. Do you know where she stayed? Think she worked upstairs. There's an old second-hand bookstore above the Thai place. Owner keeps a room up there sometimes." For kids in trouble, might wanna ask. The bookstore was a 20-minute walk. Eli didn't run. He took it slow, scanning every parked car, every pedestrian. He'd learned by now that anyone could be watching, not just men in suits or agents in black Suburbans. Sometimes the threat looked like a tourist with a camera. Sometimes it looked like a mother with a stroller. If they'd gotten close before, they could get close again. The shop was called Marlowe's Books. The sign hung crooked, paint flaking. The front window held a small display of forgotten hardbacks and a faded closed Mondays sign. But the door opened when he pushed it. A bell overhead chimed. Behind the counter sat a woman in her 60s. Wireframe glasses, short grey curls. She didn't look up from her notebook, looking for anything particular. I think someone I know stayed here. Her name was Leela, maybe went by something else. She had a green notebook, burn scar on her hand. The woman's pen stopped moving. Then she looked up slowly. She left last year, she said. Didn't say where, but she stayed here, off and on. Rented the room above the stockroom, paid in cash, wrote in that notebook constantly. She was quiet, but kind. Smiled like someone who didn't believe the world would let her. Did she leave anything behind? A pause. She left a letter. Told me to hold it in case someone who looked like him ever came asking. Like who? Her words. He'll look like the man who got me out. The woman turned, opened a drawer, and pulled out a small, folded envelope. She handed it to him carefully, like it was a piece of glass. There was no name on it, just one word. Eli, his fingers trembled. He opened it. I don't know if this will reach you, but if it does, I'm not running from you. I'm running for you. There are still people watching. They don't forget. I tried to go public once, in 2015. I gave an interview under an alias. It was scrubbed within 24 hours. 2 days later, a man tried to push me in front of a train. I've stayed quiet ever since. Your father saved my life. Twice he made me promise I'd leave breadcrumbs. You found one. There's more, but not here. Find room 18, the real one. Not the code, the room. It's not in Afghanistan. It's in Montana. It was disguised as a therapy research clinic in 2006. Closed a year later. Officially, go to Windmere Ridge. That's where the door is. The bottom of the letter had a small sketch. A crude drawing of a building. 3 windows. A single tree, dot, and 2 words. Be careful. Eli folded the letter and slipped it into his coat. His heart raced, but his mind was locked in Montana. That's where this trail went next. Outside the bookstore, the street was quiet. Too quiet. He turned the corner and walked into the alley behind the Thai place. The moment he stepped into the shadowed gap between the buildings, he felt it. The change in the air, the silence sharpened. The hairs on his neck rose, then dashed footsteps behind. Him close. He turned fast. The man was already moving. Average height, tan jacket, too fast to be casual. Eli ducked, the man's shoulder grazing his head as he swung wide. A knife glinted. Eli grabbed the man's wrist, twisted hard. The blade clattered to the pavement. They struggled, crashing into a dumpster. The man slammed a knee into Eli's ribs. Pain exploded, but Eli held on. A flash of red across the man's temple tattoo scar. Then dash sirens. The man shoved Eli away and bolted. Gone in seconds. Vanished into the maze of back streets. Eli staggered to his feet, clutching his side. Blood soaked his shirt. But the letter was still in his coat. He didn't wait for the cops. He was gone before the sirens reached the block. The bus to Montana took 2 days. Eli slept in short, shallow bursts, always with one hand on the strap of his bag. He changed buses in St. Louis, then again in Billings. At every station, he checked reflections, watched shadows, memorized shoes. No one followed. Or if they did, they were better than he was. Windmere Ridge was more remote than he expected. A town of maybe 300 people, clinging to the edge of a mountain. Range that looked like it had fought off civilization for decades. Cell service was non-existent. Gas stations had analog pumps. The only motel was a 3-room house with a handwritten sign out front, Ridgeview Rest. Eli paid for a room in cash. The owner didn't ask questions, just handed him a key and pointed to the room with the red door. The map from Leela's letter was clear. The building 3 windows, 1 tree was located just north of the ridge line, about 4 miles by foot. He left before dawn. The trail was muddy, washed out in places, but climbable. He passed a broken fence line, then a rusted satellite dish, half buried in snow. An old sign read, North Point Therapeutic Research. Facility closed, this was it. The building stood 2 stories tall. Stone base wood siding. Vines covered most of the lower windows. The tree from the sketch still stood crooked, split at the trunk, like lightning had kissed it once and then left it to rot. The front door was chained, but the side entrance, half hidden under a collapsed awning, had no lock. Eli stepped inside. Silence. The floor creaked beneath his boots. Dust covered everything. Old chairs, broken light fixtures, a cracked mirror. Room numbers were still visible along the hallway. 12, 13, 14. He kept going. 17. And then the door was different. Metal, reinforced. A keypad sat to the right. Dead and rusted. Eli pushed. It didn't budge. He stepped back, scanned the hallway, then remembered something. His father's Bible, the old one from the sentry box. He pulled it from his pack, opened it to the section where the map had been. A code was scrawled faintly in the margins. 81972. He typed it into the keypad. Nothing but... Then click door groaned open 2 inches. Inside, darkness. He stepped in. The air was thick, metallic, like copper and mold. He flicked on his flashlight. The room wasn't large, maybe 15 feet by 15, but it was lined with observation glass on one side. The mirror kind. A single chair sat bolted in the center, straps on the arms. A table against the wall held old devices, wires, goggles, a rusted 4-stand. Papers lay scattered across the floor. He picked one up. Subject exhibits signs of full visual override. Memory recall protocols activated after 9 sessions. Photophobic response in line with conditioning model. Subject LR. Another paper. Witness statement from handler. She screamed when the light came on. Not from pain, but from remembering something that hadn't happened. And a final file, this one in a sealed folder, labeled in thick marker. More J&, inside, a letter, typed, Captain Morgan has breached protocol. He has extracted subject 18. This is to be considered a direct violation of Operation E-47 security. His death will be staged in Kandahar. No body will be recovered. All documents relating to his deployment are to be scrubbed. All secondary contacts neutralized. Eli's knees gave out. He sat on the floor. The air around him spun. They had planned it all. Not just the cover dash up his father's death. His mother's grief, his own lost childhood, all of it staged. The lights in the room flickered once, then twice, and twice, and in the mirror, he saw it. A camera still watching. He stood, backed out slowly. He didn't run, not yet, but he knew someone would be coming soon. They'd know the lock had been opened, that someone had walked inside. He reached the edge of the trail just as a black SUV pulled up the old dirt road. Too late, he dove into the trees, rolled beneath a fallen log, and stayed still. 2 men exited the vehicle. Black jackets, comes in their ears. They didn't speak, just entered the building. Eli waited 20 minutes before crawling back toward the motel. By the time he returned, a note was taped to his door in black pen. Room 18 was just the beginning. You're in deeper now. Come to Missoula. Ask for Aiden, don't wait. He burned the note packed. Left before sunrise, because the ghosts weren't just real, they were awake, and now they were watching him too. Eli reached Missoula just before 9 a.m., riding in the back of a boxy rideshare truck with cracked leather seats and a dashboard that rattled at every bump. The driver, a former forest ranger who barely spoke, dropped him near a downtown coffee shop and drove off without asking questions. That was the kind of anonymity Eli needed. His ribs still ached from the fight behind the bookstore 2 towns ago, and the note taped to his motel door had been clear. Come to Missoula. Ask for Aiden. Don't wait. He didn't. Missoula's air was sharp with pine, early frost, and the hush of a town too quiet for how big it looked. Every third person seemed to know the other. A place where outsiders stood out. That made Eli nervous. He entered the cafe, a small brick hand-glass shop called Hearthline, and ordered a black coffee just to blend in. Then he asked the barista, a woman with auburn hair and sharp eyes, if she knew someone named Aiden. Her expression didn't change, but her eyes shifted slightly. What's your name? She asked. Eli. She gave a short nod. Leave the coffee, go out the side door, walk 1 block north to the alley behind the print shop. Look for the man with the blue scarf. Eli thanked her and did exactly that. The alley smelled like damp cardboard and cigarettes. He passed a rusted dumpster, then saw him, an older man, maybe mid-60s, tall, grey stubble on his chin, and a deep blue scarf looped around his neck. Eli stopped. Aiden. The man turned. His eyes were tired, but sharp. You look like your father, he said. Come. He led Eli through a back door into what appeared to be a repurposed art gallery, bare walls, faint outlines of where canvases had hung, an old security camera blinking red in the corner. Aiden locked the door behind them and motioned for Eli to sit at a folding table in the center of the room. I knew he'd send someone eventually, Aiden said, sitting across from him. I just didn't expect it to be his son. You knew my dad. I helped him vanish. Eli blinked. You staged his death. Aiden nodded once. We faked the attack on the convoy. Took months of planning. Had to bribe 2 defense contractors, 1 journalist, and a warlord. But yes, your father didn't die in Afghanistan. He died on paper. Why? Aiden leaned forward, folding his hands, because he tried to expose what Operation Afterlight really was. And once he crossed that line, the government didn't want him missing, they wanted him erased. Eli's throat tightened. My mother, she thought he was dead. She still does. And he thought that was the only way she'd survive, Aiden said. They warned him, said if he talked, she'd disappear next. And you, too. Eli looked down. I found room 18, he he said quietly. In Montana, they were doing memory conditioning, light-based psychological testing. They were turning kids into subjects, Aiden finished. Not soldiers, not spies, just subjects. Eli reached into his bag, pulled out Leela's green notebook, and set it on the table. She left this, he said. Said she tried to go public once. Someone tried to kill her. She's not wrong, Aiden said. They tried the same with me. Only difference was Jai expected it. Where is she? Aiden hesitated, then reached into his coat and placed a small burner phone on the table. It was already unlocked, one message open on the screen. Leela, safe, deep north, stay dark, trust only Eli. Eli stared at it. She's alive. Aiden nodded. For now. Where is deep north? Alaska. But it's not just about her anymore. It's about what she still has. Your father got it out before he vanished. She's the only one who's ever seen the full afterlight files, the true Phase 2 plans. Phase 2. Aiden's voice dropped. They weren't just conditioning children. They were experimenting with sleeper triggers. Visual patterns embedded into memory through trauma and repetition. The goal wasn't espionage, it was obedience. Total, unconscious obedience. Eli felt a wave of cold pass through his chest. You mean like post-hypnotic programming? Except real, except tested, except used. Eli leaned back. And the worst part, Aiden said, is that it didn't stop. Afterlight was just the prototype. It became something else, something worse. What? They called it Directive Iris, a hidden program embedded in schools, correctional facilities, even social media algorithms. That sounds insane. I thought so too, Aiden said, until I found the footage. He stood, walked to a locked cabinet, opened it, and pulled out an old laptop. He placed it in front of Eli and opened a folder labeled IRIS Class A, inside dozens of video files. One was labeled Layla Final Session.mp4. Aiden clicked it. The screen flickered. The timestamp read April 3rd, 2012. 4:19 a.m. Leela sat strapped to the chair in room 18. Her eyes were wide, pupils dilated. A screen behind her flashed light pulses in complex patterns, white, then red, then a shape and iris, flower blooming. Over and over. Then a voice came through the speaker. Leela, what do you remember? She spoke without blinking. The barn, the man with the badge, the noise. What do you feel when you see this image? A series of symbols flashed. Her hands twitched, cold, then nothing. Would you obey? Yes. Would? You harm if the flower opens. Yes. The screen went black. Eli sat frozen. They were planting kill orders. He whispered dot. Aiden nodded grimly. But it never worked fully. Not with her. She broke the loop. That's why they feared her. She wasn't just a survivor. She was the proof that it could be resisted. Eli stood, pacing. I need to get to her now. You can't go directly, Aiden said. There. Watching every known path out of Montana and Idaho. Even the ferries to Juneau are tapped. Then how? There's a pilot. He flew your father north years ago. Name's Cole Hastings. Used to run mail routes. Now he's off-grid. Last I heard, he was laying low in Butte. Can he take me? If he still remembers Isaac Morgan, he'll do more than that. Eli grabbed his bag. I'm leaving tonight. Then, take this, Aiden said, handing him a folded piece of paper. It's a map, Not GPS, not satellite, hand-drawn. Only Leela, your father, and I know this trail. Use it, or you won't find her. Eli took the paper, heart pounding. Will, I see you again. Ideen gave a small, tired smile. I've lived through 3 wars, 5 betrayals, and 2 resurrections, but I'm not sure I'll survive the next visit from them, so probably not. Eli nodded. There was nothing left to say. He disappeared into the cold Missoula night. He found Cole Hastings 3 nights later. The man was tall, flannel-clad, smelled like tobacco and gasoline, and had eyes like chipped stone. The old airfield outside Butte was silent when Eli arrived. Only one hangar remained open. A single-engine plane sat in the middle, wings dusted with frost. I knew Isaac, Cole said before Eli even spoke. Knew him before he became a ghost. I told him if he ever needed to send someone back through hell, I'd fly him myself. Then I need you now. Cole lit a cigarette, nodded once. Where we headed? Eli unfolded the hand-drawn map. Cole studied it, exhaled slowly. Cold country, no coordinates. Nope. Just what my father and Leela left. Cole tapped ash to the floor. Pack light. We leave at dawn. The flight was brutal. Freezing. Winds, cross-currents. An old rattling engine that sounded like it might give up at any second. But by midday, they were soaring over pine forests, endless ice flats, and sharp ridges of untouched land. Then Cole tapped the window. End of the road, he said. You sure she's here? No, Eli replied. But I have to try. Cole landed on a frozen lake, skis hissing across the ice. They taxied to a stop beside a tree line. She'll see you before you see her, Cole said. Move slow, hands visible. Eli stepped out. Snow crunched beneath his boots. He walked for nearly 20 minutes deep, into the trees until he saw it. A faint light through the branches. A cabin, small, secluded, smoke rising from a metal chimney. He took a breath, then knocked. The door opened slowly, and there she was, Leela, older, stronger, but unmistakably her. She stared at him a long moment, then whispered, You made it. Eli stepped inside. Behind him, the door closed, and everything finally began to make sense. Leela stepped back and opened the door just wide enough for Eli to slip inside. The cabin was small but warm, heated by a wood-burning stove in the corner. A kettle hissed quietly on top, steam curling up toward the ceiling. The walls were lined with hand-cut logs, worn but solid. No photos, no visible electronics, just a cot, a table with notebooks, and a world where time seemed to have stopped. She didn't speak right away, just studied him. Her eyes were sharp, wary, but strangely at pieces. If she'd lived 10 lives since they last crossed paths. You look like him, she said finally, motioning for him to sit at the table. Same jaw, same quiet. Eli lowered his duffel to the floor and sat across from her. The tension between them wasn't hostile. It was weighted with years of silence, of running, of knowing they were both shaped by the same ghost, Isaac. Morgan, you're alive, he said, voice hoarse. For now, Leela replied. But if they found Missoula, they'll find here too. So let's not waste time. She pulled out a tin box from beneath the table. It looked ordinarily something you'd store loose nails in, but the lock on it was military grade. Thought this was destroyed, she said. But he lied, Isaac. He said it was all gone. The files, the footage, everything. But before he disappeared, he left this with me. She set it in front of him, Eli stared at it. It was cold to the touch, heavier than it looked. "How do you open it?" he asked. "He said I wouldn't be able to, that only you would, and only after you'd seen room 18. Eli swallowed. "I saw it, then look inside." He ran his fingers along the lock and noticed it wasn't biometric, it was analog, but encoded. There was a rotating combination dial, but it wasn't numbered. Instead, there were symbols, shapes, some familiar, others completely alien. Then he remembered the symbol on the wall in room 18, the iris flower. He turned the dial to the petal pattern he'd seen 3 points. Looped Stayman heard a soft click. The box popped open. Inside was a flash drive, old metal casing, labeled simply Keller beneath it, a note in his father's handwriting. "If you're reading this, you're closer to the truth than I ever got. Don't trust Keller. He's alive. He's the one who buried Af, and he's not working alone." Eli looked up. "Who's Keller?" Leela's face tightened. "Dr. Evan Keller. He was the psychologist behind room 18. He designed the light patterns, the memory tests, the override conditioning. They said he died in a lab fire in 2010. I believed it for years, but he didn't. Your father started to suspect as much in 2015. That's when they came after him again. But how is he alive? He was declared dead." Layla nodded grimly. "That's what Afterlight did best. They didn't just disappear people. They disappeared truth, names, histories. Keller was too valuable to lose. He knew how to silence minds. He perfected the sleeper algorithm." Eli stared at the drive in his hand. "If I plug this in, can it be traced?" "Not if we use what I built." Leela reached under the cot and pulled out a thick tablet-style device, but stripped down. No ports, no internet, just a hardwired air-gapped processor and local decryption tools. It booted up with a low hum. Eli plugged the drive into the custom port. Lines of code flashed across the screen. For a second, it looked like gibberish. Then words started to form. Afterlight, Phase 2 initiation record, Level 9 clearance. Required ID Keller 0719 file. Iris Alfili tapped to open it. A video loaded. Init. Keller stood in a white lab coat, older, bearded, looking directly into the camera. "If you're watching this, Phase 2 has either been breached or voluntarily exposed. Either way, containment is no longer an option. Directive Iris was never about memory. That was a smokescreen. It was about submission, visual obedience. We discovered that trauma, when paired with recursive light and symbol exposure, created neural imprints. Think of it like invisible ink burned into the brain, only readable when the right light is shown. These weren't spies. They were keys, people turned into code. We activated 6 trials. Only 1 succeeded. The subject, project name, L. Leela's breath caught. Eli turned to her slowly. "That's you, isn't it?" She nodded once. "I was 10. They said it was a scholarship program for gifted students from unstable homes. My mother was dying. I didn't ask questions." Eli's chest ached. "You were a test subject." She gave a humorless smile, and a very good one, until I started remembering things I was never supposed to know. The video continued. Subject L Delta broke through, conditioning by imprinting her own counter symbol, what we call a cognitive firewall. It was unplanned, unstable, but powerful. She became immune. We terminated the program 3 weeks later. The files here contain all 6 subject profiles. If any of them are alive, they are either unaware of what they are or waiting to be triggered. The video ended. Leela clicked into the data folder. 6 names, 5 redacted. 1 still readable. Graham Turner, subject B3. Eli leaned in. Do you know him? Leela shook her head. But your father might have. Look, there's a connection ID. Looks like a military base log. They opened the file. Turner had served in Iraq under the same battalion as Isaac Morgan, stationed at Camp Dustline in 2006, but went AWOL in 2007. Status, unknown. Eli rubbed his temples. Jesus. Leela sat back. Your father was trying to find the others. That was the real mission. Afterlight was the opening act. Directive Iris was the show. And now Keller's alive, hiding somewhere, still pulling strings. Leela nodded. I don't know where he is, but I know someone who might. The last operative your father trusted, a woman named Sienna Locke. Where is she? Leela hesitated. Prison. Eli stared. Prison. She turned herself in 4 years ago. Said nothing. No deal. No plea. She's been in a federal holding unit in Nevada ever since. No visitors. No mail. But I found a crack she'd left a phrase in the intake log. 1 sentence. She handed him a printout. The phrase was scrawled at the bottom of the page. If Isaac's son ever comes looking, tell him the red switch still works. Eli's hands trembled. What does that mean? Leila shook her head. Only one person would know who you. Eli stared at the note. Something clicked. Not a metaphor, not a code, an actual red switch. He remembered his childhood home, his father's workshop in the basement. There was an old fuse box in the far corner, behind the shelving, and on the side a small red toggle. Isaac used to tell him, don't touch that. Not unless something bad happens. Eli never touched it, but maybe now was the time. I have to go back, he said. To Charleston, Leila asked. He nodded. There might be something there. Maybe a final message. Leila exhaled slowly. If you go, don't go alone. You'll need backup, and you'll need to disappear again after, because if Keller's watching and he will be that switch, might be the one thing he's afraid of. Eli packed the flash drive and the tablet carefully. When I come back, he said, we finish this. Leila nodded. I'll be ready. He left the cabin before sunrise, and he knew, as he stepped back into the wilderness, something had just shifted. Something massive was waiting beneath that red switch. The train to Charleston was slow and noisy, but it gave Eli the anonymity he needed. No TSA scans, no ticket in his name, no digital trail. Just him, a duffel bag, and the red switch that had lived in his memory like a shadow. It had snowed recently. The trees looked dipped in chalk, and the houses near the tracks leaned with age. His childhood home was only 15 minutes from the old station. He walked. He didn't even realize he'd been holding his breath until the house came into view. Same brown siding, same dented mailbox, same wind chime made from old silverware that his mum used to love. Only now it was still, silent. The house had been empty for 4 years. Since his mother moved into assisted living, no one had touched it. That meant the basement, his father's workshop, might still be exactly as it was. Eli pushed open the back door with a shoulder. It creaked, but didn't resist. Dust greeted him, the kind that smells like thyme and wood. He passed the kitchen, the hallway, and stopped at the narrow basement door. Took a deep breath, and went down. The workbench was still there. Half-finished tools, a cracked lamp. On the far wall, the fuse box. and next to it, half hidden behind a rusted shelf, was the red switch. It was smaller than he remembered. Paint faded, handles slightly crooked, but still there. He stepped toward it. Heart, THUDDING. Then stopped. There was a sound upstairs, soft, slow, a creak on the floorboards. Someone else was in the house. Eli dropped to a crouch, slipped behind the furnace, and listened. Another step then. Another. He pulled out the small folding knife from his boot. Useless against bullets. But it gave him a grip on something. A figure appeared at the top of the basement stairs, tall, wearing black, holding a phone, not a weapon. He turned slightly, and Eli recognized him. Cole, the pilot. What the hell are you doing here? Eli whispered, stepping into the light. Cole didn't jump. Followed you. Figured you'd need help. Guess I was right. Eli exhaled slowly. You scared the hell out of me. Get used to it. You're in your father's shoes now. He motioned toward the red switch. That it? Eli nodded. Cole stepped back. Then I'm just here to witness. Eli stood before the switch again, put his hand on it, and pulled. There was no click, no hum. Just a mechanical grind from inside the wall. Then a panel opened. A square recess behind the wall opened like a vault door. Inside, a black case. Labeled relay. Eli lifted it out and placed it on the workbench. Unlatched it. Inside was a tablet sealed, thick, military grade and a stack of paper instructions in his father's handwriting. The top page simply said, "Don't connect to the internet." Eli powered it on. It booted into a custom interface blue screen. Black text, no brand, no menu, just one question. Authenticate, key phrase. Cole looked over. You know it. Eli remembered something Leela had said. When she was young, in room 18, they used symbols as emotional anchors. But she had one that wasn't theirs. One she made herself. A word she said at once. Ashfall. Eli typed it in. The screen blinked. Access granted. Subject files unlocked. Video log. Isaac Morgan. Final entry. Eli tapped the video. His father appeared. Older, grey in the beard. Tired, but alert. If you're watching this, then you know more than I ever wanted you to. You've seen room 18. You've found Leela. Maybe you even know about Directive Iris. I tried to shut it down. I failed. Not because they were stronger, but because they were already inside. Iris wasn't just a program. It was a tool for control, first on the battlefield, then in society, through screens, through light, through emotion. You'll hear names, Keller, Locke, Turner. But there's one more. The one I never could find. Subject A1. The first success. The one they perfected. No name, no face, just orders. And the scary part. He doesn't know he's active. Cole looked over, expression darkening. What does that mean? Eli read further in a side folder. Location logs, trigger phrases, and something that made his blood go cold. A list of universities with timestamps, incident reports, all with identical patterns. Sudden violence, loss of memory, bright flashes. Before onset, no motive. Eli whispered, "They've already started testing this publicly." Cole nodded grimly. And the media thinks it's mental health or random shooters. But it's not. It's controlled. Eli found one more file. A partial transmission, labeled Iris Live Test. Sync initiated the screen, filled with cascading code, and one chilling line. Subject A1, identified. Current location, Seattle. Trigger level, stable. Cole took a step back. That's only 2 states away. Eli looked at the last line on his father's paper. If you find a 1, don't engage. Find the controller. Keller doesn't trigger, he assigns. Eli shut the case. We need to find Keller before A1 is activated. Cole nodded. You think Leela can help? She has to. She broke free once. She's the only one who ever did. Eli took the drive, the tablet, and the instructions and packed them tightly. We go to Nevada first. Sienna Locke is in that prison. If she left that message, she's part of this too. And if she's compromised, Eli looked at him, then we're already too late. They left Charleston under nightfall. Quiet roads, no GPS, no signals. They moved like ghosts, like Isaac taught him through notes and memories, and deep in his chest, Eli could feel it. Everything his father died for was just beginning. The Nevada sun had a way of burning through everything: metal, memory, and even silence. As Eli and Cole drove through the flat, dust-colored landscape, the only thing in sight was the long black road and the shimmer of heat ahead. A fence appeared on the horizon like a mirage, then towers, then motion detectors. They had reached Redstone Federal Detention Facility, where Sienna Locke had been held in solitary confinement for 4 years without trial. Eli glanced at the printed intake log. Leela had given him the same line, still circled in red ink. If Isaac's son ever comes looking, tell him the red switch still works. Cole parked a quarter mile from the main entrance. They couldn't risk official entry, too many cameras, too much federal involvement. But they had another way, in an old fire access route Isaac had once mapped out in a letter Leela recovered from a dead drop in 2016. They climbed a ridge behind the compound, crossed through abandoned fencing, and waited behind a rocky incline until the guard shift changed. The timing was surgical. I still can't believe she turned herself in, Eli muttered. She didn't do it for mercy, Cole replied. She did it to disappear. She knew something. As they approached the Southeast Service entrance, Cole used a small magnetic disruptor to interfere with the sensor. They slid inside through an unguarded vent corridor, then into a forgotten maintenance closet. From there, it was just a matter of memorized corridors, double-checked clearance maps, and not getting seen. Sienna was being held in Block C5, the deep cell sector. When they reached the access control point, Eli paused. This is it. You ready? Cole asked. I'm not sure anyone is. Cole nodded, then lifted a stolen ID badge to the scanner. The door buzzed open. They stepped inside. The hall was dark, concrete, and humming with electricity. Only one cell at the end had lights on. The rest were empty or shut off. That was her. Sienna Locke. She was sitting cross-legged on the floor of her cell, hands resting on her knees. Facing the door, her hair had been cut short, eyes sharp and alert. Not the look of someone broken, the look of someone waiting. When she saw Eli, she stood slowly. Well, she said softly, he did send you. Her voice wasn't weak. It was calm, measured. You knew I'd come, Eli asked. No, she said, but I hoped he'd left a trail you could follow. I wasn't sure he had time. Eli stepped closer to the glass. Why are you here? Because if I were anywhere else, she said, they'd have killed me by now. You turned yourself in. I needed them to think I was contained, but I also needed leverage. This place is run by contractors. Not all of them answer to Keller. Eli's face tightened. So he's still in charge. Sienna tilted her head. You saw the files, didn't you? Eli nodded. Then you know Directive Iris was never about intel. It was about control. And Keller didn't abandon it. He evolved it. I was his second in command until I realized what he was really doing. What was he doing? Testing live triggers. Not in the lab, in the field. Eli's breath caught. You mean people? Sienna nodded. School campuses, malls, protests. He embedded the triggers in digital ads, patterns in flash transitions, music videos, even phone lock screens. Then he sat back and waited. Eli stepped back slightly. How many, we don't know. Most subjects didn't fully activate, but when they did, he documented everything. Like watching code crash in real time. The news never traced it back. They called it mental illness, stress, but we knew. And your father knew. Eli's chest ached. Then why didn't Isaac expose him? He tried, but Keller had deeper roots. People in Intel, health departments, cyber policy, even Congress. By the time Isaac gathered proof, he was already marked. Sienna leaned forward slightly. You need to find Keller before he activates Subject A1. We found a file, Eli said. Says a 1 is in Seattle. Stable, not yet triggered. Sienna's expression shifted. Then you're out of time. Who is he? Eli asked. No name, not one we ever used. A1 was grown, not recruited. They raised him in a clean facility. No outside contact. Pure exposure. Every test passed. Every code held. No free will left. He's not a sleeper. He's a weapon. Eli's voice dropped. Can he be stopped? Sienna looked directly at him. Only by destroying the trigger system. The core, Keller. She nodded once. There's one way to reach him, but it's off the books. Tell me, he has a private lab buried inside a decommissioned dam in Washington. It's not on any registry. No electricity grid. No GPS tags. He calls it the Glass House. Cole finally spoke. How do we get in? Sienna reached under her cot, pulled out a ragged cloth, and unwrapped a flat metal key unmarked. Except for a serial code, G19R. This is the physical access override. It's keyed to the service lift in the North Dam tunnel. You'll need it to get to level 3, where the relay servers are. Eli reached for it, but she pulled it back. Slightly. One condition, she said. Take me with you. Eli looked at her like she was insane. You're in federal lockdown, and I'm also the only person alive who's seen Keller's face in the last 5 years. You'll never spot him on a monitor. He rebuilt himself, literally, face. Surgery, voice recoding. If you don't have me, you won't even know when you're looking at him. Cole nodded slowly. She's right. Eli hesitated. If we get caught, you won't, Sienna said. I designed the outer protocols of the Glass House myself. I know when it's blind. He looked at her again, this time not as a prisoner but as someone who might be their only way through the last firewall his father couldn't breach. Then we get you out, he said. She nodded and handed him the key. But if I'm lying, she added, shoot me before you reach level 3. Because once the system recognizes me, Keller will know we're inside. The lights above flickered once. Eli took that as a sign. Let's go. They moved under cover of night. Getting Sienna out of Redstone was easier than expected, because she already had a plan. A system of blind spots and ventilation tunnels she had quietly mapped out in her 4 years inside. Her cot had been built over a service grate. Behind the loose panel was a straight shaft to the foundation tunnels sealed for decades. But not forgotten by someone like her. Cole dropped first, then Sienna. Eli followed, pulling the grate shut behind him. The tunnels smelled like oil and rust. Every footstep echoed with ghosts. They moved fast, low to the ground, past piping, through valve chambers, and out through a forgotten drainage trench that emptied behind a maintenance yard. By the time the alarms blared in C Block, they were already in the desert. They had stolen a black SUV from a contractor's lot, no plates and no tracking system. Sienna knew how to check. Within an hour, they were gone. By morning, they were halfway to Washington, in the back seat. Sienna remained quiet, staring out the window, as if chasing memories behind the sunburnt hills. Eli finally turned toward her. "You knew my father, didn't you?" he asked. She nodded slowly. "I did. How well?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Well enough to know he died with your name in his last breath." Eli felt something shift in his chest. What was he like, to you? Sienna smiled, just slightly. He was the only one who ever saw Keller for what he really was, a manipulator, a coward hiding behind code and commands. Isaac knew that control wasn't just about programming minds, it was about corrupting meaning. He fought to preserve meaning, choice, humanity. Eli looked out the window. "Do you think he'd be proud of me?" Sienna didn't hesitate. He already was. That's why he left the red switch for you, and not anyone else. He knew you'd follow through. Cole changed the subject. "The glass house. Tell us everything." Sienna leaned forward between the seats. "It's buried inside the rockwater dam, 70 miles east of Seattle, supposedly decommissioned in 2009, but in reality, Keller transformed it into an isolated research facility. It operates entirely off-grid water. Turbines power the entire complex. Security?" Cole asked. "Minimal on the outside." He wanted discretion, not firepower, but inside. Biometric doors, motion sense hallways, neuroscanners in the core chamber. That's where the relay server is, where Keller can trigger Subject A1 from anywhere. Any guards. "Only two types," she said. "Automated and indoctrinated, meaning his staff aren't loyal. They're conditioned." Eli's stomach turned. "So they're like partial A1S." She nodded grimly. "Test variants. They'll follow orders without question, unless interrupted by an external command Keller hasn't programmed for, like someone who's already broken the conditioning." Sienna didn't say it aloud, but Eli understood. Leela they arrived at the dam just past 3A.M. It loomed out of the rocks like a sleeping colossus, concrete, layered, cracked at the edges, but still pulsing with hidden energy. The access tunnel was where Sienna said it would be, beneath a moss-covered slab of metal hidden by dry brush. She pulled out the override key and slid it into a small socket buried in the wall. The slab hummed, then rolled inward. Behind it, darkness, stairs leading down cold, sterile air greeted them. They entered. The walls were smooth, metallic, no markings, just lights that flicked on as they passed, motion activated. When they reached the third floor, Sienna held up her hand. "Stop. Here. That panel will scan you. If you've ever passed through a Keller facility, it'll recognize your IG pattern." Eli stared. "I haven't." "Good, I have. So let me walk first." Sienna stepped onto the panel. A light passed over her face. A soft beep. Sienna lock. Clearance confirmed. Role, behavioral command, supervisor. A door unlocked. They moved deeper into the core chamber. It was colder here, like being inside a machine. The hallway opened into a circular room. Servers pulsed quietly against the walls. Screens showed live feeds, no faces, just cities, highways, shopping malls, lecture halls, all muted, all observed. One screen showed Seattle. Subject A1 was tagged on a building's rooftop, sitting alone, not moving, but his eyes were open, watching. Eli whispered, "Is that him?" Sienna stepped closer. Not yet. She moved to the central console and plugged in the tablet Eli had recovered in Charleston. Immediately, the screen shifted. A file opened. Isaac Morgan, final override, COD. Eli leaned forward. This is it. But the screen, GLIT, CHED. Then the lights flickered. A new voice filled the room, familiar, smooth and cold. "Hello, Ellie." They all froze. Keller, he was watching. "Your father was clever," the voice said, "but predictable. He left a trail, hoping you'd follow it. And now you have. Right to my doorstep." Sienna moved to unplug the console. "Don't," Keller warned. "The system is linked. Any forced shutoff, Subject A1 goes active." Eli's blood ran cold. "You wouldn't." "I don't need to," Keller replied. "I've already won." "Then why talk to me?" "Because part of you still wants to believe there's a way out of this, that Iris can be destroyed. But it can't. Because Iris isn't a system anymore. It's in everything now. In phones, in cities, in classrooms. It's in belief." Eli's voice cracked. "You killed my father." "No," Keller said. "Your father killed himself the day he chose resistance. He knew the world doesn't want freedom, Eli. It wants illusion, safety, control." Eli stepped forward. "And I'm here to break that double quote silence. Then you'll die like he did." The screen went black. An alarm blared. Sienna spun around. There. Coming. Cole pulled his sidearm. From where? All directions. Eli grabbed the tablet and typed furiously. "There's an override phrase." Isaac said it wasn't a code, it was a belief, a memory. Then he saw it. The phrase Layla whispered in her sleep when they stayed in Missoula. "What is chosen cannot be unchosen." He typed it. The screen lit up. Final override accepted. IRIS, root trigger, disabled. Subject A1, disarmed. Silence fell. The alarms stopped. Sienna exhaled. "You did it." Cole looked stunned. "You shut it down." Then the ground shook. An explosion in the lower level. Sienna's eyes widened. "He's blowing the servers." "Keller's here," Eli shouted. "No, but his failsafe is." They ran Dot up through the corridor, past collapsing panels, falling. Debris flames chased them like angry spirits. By the time they burst out of the tunnel, the sky behind them was red. The glass house was gone. They didn't stop driving until they crossed the Idaho border. Sienna hadn't spoken for miles. Eli finally looked at her. "You knew Isaac well." She nodded. "We built the failsafe together. Only you could trigger it, because only you were unmarked." Eli nodded slowly. "And now Keller knows that too." Cole spoke from the front. "So what now?" Eli looked out at the sunrise. "We find Subject A1 before Keller does." He turned to Sienna. "And then we finish what my father started." The motel was nothing more than a stopgap, a place to sleep, shower, and regroup. But for Eli, it felt like neutral ground. He hadn't closed his eyes in 30 hours. Outside, the Idaho wind howled through the hills. But inside, room 1 Everything was still. Sienna sat at the corner table with a glass of water. Cole was asleep on the floor, one hand resting on his weapon-like instinct. And Eli stared at the grainy security footage on his laptop screen, the last known image of subject. A -1 dot. It was taken at 3:17 a.m. a week ago. A rooftop in downtown Seattle. A man, mid-30s, dark coat, motionless. The time stamp blinked, like a countdown. "What is he waiting for?" Eli whispered. Sienna looked up. "He doesn't know." "What do you mean?" "A one isn't aware he's a one. That's the core of his design. He has a life, a job, maybe a family." Keller embedded the entire protocol beneath conscious thought. "Then how do we stop him?" She took a breath. "We don't." Eli turned sharply. "We don't. We find him," she said, "and we show him who he is. That's the only way to disarm the final threat. Not by code, but by choice." Eli stared at her, realization washing over him. He has to break it himself. Sienna nodded, the way Leela did. Silence followed. Cole stirred on the floor, mumbling something in sleep, then rolled over. Eli stood. "Then we find him. Tonight." Seattle had changed. Glass towers rose where old train yards used to be. Drone traffic buzzed quietly above like metal bees. But what hadn't changed was the pulse of the city, fast, hungry, full of noise. It wasn't hard to trace the pattern from the surveillance. A1 worked at a private security firm, ironic. In a way, the same agency that managed campus lockdown protocols during the beta phase of Iris. His name on paper was Daniel Heller, but that wasn't his real name. It was a constructed identity. Birth, record, driver's license, social media, all created in 2016. He lived on the 24th floor of an anonymous high-rise on 9th Avenue. By 9:42 p.m., Eli, Cole, and Sienna were outside the building, watching from the alley across the street. "No." "Security guard," Cole whispered. "They won't interfere," Sienna said. "Not with a ghost identity." "And you're sure this is him?" Eli asked. She nodded. "We used to call him Spectre. He never failed a simulation, never questioned an order. That's why Keller kept him." Eli adjusted the grip on the duffel bag over his shoulder. "What's in there?" Cole asked. "Everything my father left behind." Inside, the building was quiet. No front desk, no concierge, just mirrored elevators and smooth music. They rode to the 24th floor in silence. When the doors opened, they stepped into a narrow hallway with grey carpet and overhead lights that flickered like a bad memory. Apartment 2406. Eli stood in front of it. He didn't knock. He slid a black card under the door. A thin piece of polymer Isaac once called a memory spike. It contained the original unaltered directive of IRIS, proof of what A1 really was. Then he waited. Nothing happened for a full minute. Then the door opened. He stood there, just like the photo, tall, calm, brown hair, neutral expression. "Can I help you?" he asked. Eli stepped forward slowly. "You don't know me, but I think you've been lied to your entire life." The man raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me, my name is Eli Morgan. My father was Isaac Morgan. You've been part of something called Directive Iris since you were born." The man didn't blink. "I think you have the wrong apartment." Eli reached into the duffel bag and pulled out a photograph, one from the Keller files. It showed the man as a teenager, standing in a lab, cables attached to his temple. a sequence of geometric shapes on the wall behind him. The man stared at it. Something inside him shifted. Then he whispered, "I've seen this before. In dreams." "That's not a dream," Eli said. "It's a memory," Keller blocked. "You're Subject A1. "No," the man said, but softer this time. Sienna stepped forward. "Your name isn't Daniel Heller. It never was. You were never registered in any hospital. No birth certificate before age 14. You weren't born, you were manufactured, grown, conditioned." The man's hand shook slightly. "Stop." Eli held up the memory spike. "This can show you everything. All the files, all the orders Keller buried in you. But once you see it, you can't unsee it." The man looked at them, at all of them, and for the first time, he looked afraid. "I don't want to hurt anyone." "Then take it," Eli said. He reached out and took it. The apartment lights were dim. The man, Spectre, sat at his kitchen table, staring at the spike plugged into his laptop. On screen, data scrolled silently. Images, videos, activation protocols, target sheets, timelines, psychological breakdowns. Directive Iris in full, his hands shook. His breathing grew shallow. Then he whispered, "He made me kill people, didn't he?" Eli nodded slowly. "You didn't know. That's not your fault. I still did it, but now you can choose not to." The man looked up. "I can feel it," he said. "Something inside me, a sound. It's getting louder, like a bell." Sienna stepped forward. "That's the trigger signal. It's failing now. That's good. But if it breaks," he asked, "what happens to me?" Eli answered carefully, "You become human." Outside, a storm rolled over the city, and somewhere below, a car pulled up. Keller stepped out. Alone. No guards, no guns. Just a phone in his hand. He entered the building silently, using an access code embedded in the private elevator. He knew where Eli was. He always knew. They heard the elevator first, then the hallway footsteps. Cole stood, weapon drawn. Eli stepped between him and the door. "I have to face him." Sienna nodded once. The door opened. Keller stood there, older now, face reconstructed, but unmistakable. "Hello, Eli. Keller, you shut down my system because you turned people into weapons. They were always weapons." Keller said, "I just made them efficient. You turned my father against you." "No," Keller said, stepping inside. "He did that himself. He was weak. You have his face, but you lack his spine." "I have something better," Eli said. His clarity. Keller turned to A1. "Do you really believe they'll forgive you?" he asked. The man looked up, pale but calm. "I don't care." "Then you're broken." "No," A1 said. "I'm free." He stood, unplugged the spike, and in that moment, Eli saw it. The code collapsed. Everything Keller built unraveled in seconds. A1's neural patterns shifted. The old signal died. The man took a breath, slow and deep, then looked Keller in the eye. "I remember now. All of it." Keller stepped back. "You think you can destroy me?" "No," A1 said. "We already did." And then he pressed a button on the spike. It transmitted one final burst of data. A virus, written by Isaac Morgan, injected into every Iris-linked system on the planet. It was over. Keller fled by the time Cole reached the street. The man was gone like smoke, but it didn't matter. The system was dead, and Keller had lost his only weapon. A week later, in a small field near Missoula. Eli stood alone by a stone, his father's grave. He knelt. "I found him," he said quietly. "I found the one you couldn't." He paused, and I let him choose. He placed the spike beside the headstone, then stood. Sienna waited near the car. Cole was inside, asleep again. Leela had called that morning. She was safe, watching. The news, the world was waking up, and Isaac, Morgan's son, had finished what his father started.